Hello, name's Anand. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we will be continuing with our now final 4 Wizard of Legend builds that I will be presenting personally on this channel. If you want to know more about that, look into last week's video, number 56, come here. I will be talking more so about the future of the channel, of me playing Wizard of Legend specifically in that video, in the very intro section. I marked it as well in the timestamps, go look it up if you're interested. Otherwise, we will get into today's video. I'm quite hyped for today because it is a very interesting build, for sure. And I feel quite indifferent about it, but personally I believe it's super cool. Let's get right into it. Today's build is called Bat Screech. And for once, the theme here is infinitesimally cooler than the actual build execution in the game. This is gonna be a full wind themed build, including our starter relic. Heck, even our fucking starter robe will be wind related. It's all speedy winds. Woohoo! Push enemies around a bunch, slow them down. That's what we're going to be doing. The build theme here, on the other hand, is not just that we're going to be using all wind. The idea is that we will be modeling a bat, Mr. Batman, because bats are super cool and impressive. They can hunt down prey in complete darkness without being able to see anything at all, using, and I had to look this up because I couldn't for the life of me remember, echolocation, right? They scream on a very high frequency that no human would ever be able to audibly hear. And then essentially these waves of their scream, right? The sonic waves of their scream ricochet back from the target. So they locate their target just simply screaming or flapping their wings. There are multiple techniques for that. Whales do it as well, but it's not as prevalently well known, I suppose. It's not nearly as cool when whales do it because they are enormous creatures. They just literally open their mouths and swim, and boom, they got boatloads of food, right? That's how they feed themselves, how they eat, how they hunt down prey, if you will. While bats are so much cooler. They're like a predator in the dark. And that's what we will be trying to do here today. We will be screeching a ton, and we will try to let those screeches ricochet as well. So, of course, we're going to be using all sonic wave-related abilities in this game. And then for our basic and dash, since generally speaking, there are not a lot of themed options here, there's only 4 each. After all, we're going to be using simply bat-themed weaponry. I'd say, let's get right into it, shall we? For our row, of course, we gotta run the tempo. We want to hunt down our prey, we gotta be fast. But also, tempo is typically very wind related. Wind loves cooldown reduction, loves short cooldowns, loves making yourself a lot faster, granting you movement speed in the process, or literally allowing you to just move past enemies, zoom through them, or push them away in adventurous ways. And tempo definitely inherits all those traits. Tempo Robe is absolutely fantastic for that. It grants you 15% cooldown reduction, which can be enhanced to a whopping 22.5 if I recall correctly, which is amazing. You love that. It's a lot of extra damage. Reducing your cooldowns means that you can use your abilities more, especially your crucial abilities, so you have to rely less on strong items and like the use of one ability finishing off an entire room. Instead, you can just spam out your abilities more frequently and therefore have a lot more damage and a lot more freedom in how you approach your build. That is awesome, and it does sort of fit the bat. Can't really think of a reasoning here, but think of it as a free-living, independent animal, right? It can do whatever it wants, and it's gonna be absolutely great at it. It also increases our run speed by a mere 10%, which is really not that important when you consider how lackluster this start is in the game. Run speed just helps you run circles around enemies faster or traverse through rooms faster if you literally were to ignore everything inside of that room, or if there's literally nothing in the room to begin with, so you just zoom right past, which also thematically fits, and it's gonna be a tiny bit helpful, but generally speaking, this is not an important start whatsoever. Moving on to the starter relic. Now, there are a few select choices here, I'd say. Now, I decided to run something very generic and not very inspired, let's put it that way. I don't think this is very creative, but I do like it, and I want to see it in action. I have seen it in action before. I did, of course, playtest this build, and I did end up actually liking it, much to my surprise. Not a ton. It's like a 7 out of 10, so it's pretty decent, but not more than that by any means. For our starter relic, we'll be running a defensive item which procs on us being hit. It's essentially an extra Screech in a huge AoE around us, which is not meant to echolocate enemies, but instead stun them. It is supposed to make them cower in fear and cover their ears because it's so high-pitched that it really hurts them. It's brilliant balloon. I don't know. I don't know about that name at all. Like, that name and the icon, the theme here, they don't match up at all, but the effect absolutely does. It releases a burst of wind around our character in a rather large AoE, similarly to a stone when taking damage, that stuns and pushes away nearby enemies. It does exactly what I just described, which is so cool, especially in the Animal Kingdom. That's really, really nice. It, however, has a cooldown, so you can't just proc this non-stop. You can't just deliberately walk into enemies with a ton of armor and proc this non-stop for your damage source, which would be absolutely amazing, but maybe a little bit unfair, because regular enemies are not super strong or very versatile in the first place, right? So yeah, that's Brilliant Balloon. It's gonna do a great job at keeping us safe or being an offensive tool sometimes when we literally want to deliberately proc it by running into enemies. Maybe sometimes there will be rooms that are super crowded or clumped up or simply incredibly tight. There's a lot of enemies spawning very quickly from all sides, and this is not a build that can deal well with enemies surrounding you or circumventing your crowd control, which is usually targeted into one particular direction, right? So when there's enemies coming from the front and from behind, for example, that's the easiest example here, easily, or from the left and the right, which is basically the same as from the front and the back, you will be kind of fucked. And that's where the Brilliant Balloon comes in. It's not gonna mitigate those enemies entirely, but at least it's gonna help you out to finish them off, and it's gonna give you a kind of a backup plan. Yes, of course, you have to take damage for this, but that's not really as huge of a deal, as we will be starting things off with the Robe anyway here at 500 max HP. So you will be having plenty of HP to spare, provided that you don't actually play like a complete noob and take tons of damage every stage. Let's move on to the abilities. Now, this is easily the most interesting part of the build, in my opinion, though, again, I don't find wind abilities particularly interesting in the first place. Much to my dismay, we're going to be having to use my absolute favorite wind ability in this game. I have to say, this is kind of a cool one, and I'm very remorseful that it's not better. I would love to use it more often, but it's just not very good. Our basic will be Severing Slash. I know I keep telling pretty much every single video that Aspen is my absolute favorite basic Arcana in this game, which is true, by the way. However, Severing Slash thematically is the only wind ability in this game that I really, really love, and that I would love to be better. I think this looks amazing. I think this could potentially feel very great. This could not limit the player as much as other basics, letting them freely move around a ton while doing other things. It already sort of does all of those things, but not to a very great degree. Its damage is horrendous. It just looks and feels great. And I've played a ton with this, especially while recording not only Bat Screech, but the cat-related video, Go for the Eyes. That one was very painful to record. It took a very, very long time. I played it a ton in Boss Rush, and then a shit ton in the Chaos Trials as well, to even remotely try to learn how to use this ability, as it just deals such poor damage. I really want to love it. It's kind of similar to the Razor Petals there, which is also an ability that looks amazing, feels decent, but it's just horrible. It has a horrible stat line, horrible baseline, therefore it's basically unusable. So Severing Slash, it's essentially a, well, how do I put this? It's a slash. It's a massive slash in front of your character. You slash one side, then the other, and when you hold it, it's a held Arcana, you slash both on the final hit, dealing slightly more damage. It moves you around a ton. It forces you to move forward when using the charge version, but you can just tap this non-stop. It's super, super good for tapping. I love it. It doesn't deal a great amount of damage, as you can tell. The damage numbers here are absolutely pathetic, but for crowd control and for the feel that we are all about, right? With today's themed build, this is absolutely perfect. I just love this. I can't help myself. It's a melee ability, it's a movement ability, and a basic ability. So this goes insane with a ham sandwich. I say insane here, I mean it can be enhanced. It never goes insane. Not even with a fueled berserk and the perfect setup, this thing is great. It's at best decent to use. Fueled Berserk, speaking of which, is amazing with this. I really love it, and it feels insane. It feels like you're a furious kitten scratching someone's eye out. Someone's eyes, sorry, plural, out. You can slap a Dark Katana on this. You can slap any candy on it. It's gonna be fantastic. You can slap boots on it, so as to increase its damage with the soccer cleats, for example, or the cursed equivalent that also increases the damage of your movement-based abilities. This thing is so fun, and I wish it were greater, especially with the cursed relic. This is super cool, because then not only are you super mobile while using your basic, which naturally makes you incredibly mobile, which then deals a ton more damage, but also you gain a triple dash, which for an already super mobile start, an already super mobile basis, is awesome. That is so freaking cool. I like this a lot. I wish it were better. When enhanced, the only thing it does is that the final strike is significantly large, as the wording here suggests, which is true. It has a great width at that point. Base version is already pretty darn good. It has a decent coverage. It can be missed rather easily, as it hits in a V shape. The hitbox is an actual V shape. It's not just like a 180 degree in front of your character. What you see is what you get with this one. And unfortunately, that's not a whole lot, but we won't have to make this the main focus of our build anyway. It's not even a decent backup plan, it's just a supportive ability. That's the best that I can put it. So don't put all your resources into this, it's not going to be worthwhile, especially in the late game. During the late game, you will find that basic abilities, generally speaking, are absolutely horrendous. They require for you to be super close to your target. They require for you to have found some sort of buff, like a Fueled Berserk, some sort of damage amplification, like a huge one, like a luxury handbag or double trouble, combined with gloves to attack faster or candies to deal slightly more damage occasionally. It's all very conditional and not very consistent. Even though these are, ironically so, the consistent abilities in this game. You always have a basic, you can't ever not have a basic. They always generate signature charge, and they are always here for you to enhance and use. They are your base tools without any form of cooldown ever. So these are supposed to be your consistent abilities, your consistent damage sources, healing sources occasionally, and your signature charge sources, or crowd control sources. Ironically so, in the late game, these become pretty much entirely worthless. There's only a handful of them that remain relevant, but only due to them hitting a ton, and therefore dealing a ton of damage when paired with a Fueled Berserk and high base damage. This, unfortunately, is not one of them. It barely hits at all. Its base damage is horrible, so even when you do find great damage enhancements, like the aforementioned luxury handbag or double trouble, this thing becomes mediocre to use at best. Again, base damage times 2 is still very low base damage, just twice. You might potentially end up reaching the base damage of another ability at that point, which is still very unfortunate. Let's move on to our dash. Something a lot more light-hearted. It's Airburst. I like this one a lot, personally. It's probably my favorite wind dash because it's the easiest to use. It feels convenient. It feels comfortable to use. I don't think it's super difficult by any means. It's a melee ability. It's a movement ability, so very similar to our basic. Therefore, you can definitely focus on a Dark Katana, on the aforementioned boots, yada 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 again here, and it's actually gonna make a decent amount of sense because this ability does deal somewhat a decent amount of damage. So you dash forth, and essentially with you travels this wave of air, this gust of wind, which will blow enemies away and deal a decent chunk of damage to them, like so. 15 damage. Base version has a very, very low cooldown, a decent coverage around your character. The width is quite great. The length of this is very poor. Let's be honest, you have to be very close to your enemies. You can't do something like from too far away. From over here, for example, I won't be hitting the final enemy there. I will be missing it entirely. Simply dashing into it. It's not stunned. It hasn't been hit. So it will just greet me with a sword to my face. Right, so you have to use this appropriately. I love to put extra charges on it because it gets decently powerful, just pushing enemies around. A back and forth of this ability can deal a ton of damage, can render enemies entirely useless or unable to do anything about it, and then you can follow that up with a basic, for example, to the face, which is generally speaking very fast to finish them off. It's quite nice for that. When enhanced, it creates a larger burst, so greater width, that also slows, which is nice. I like that a lot. That helps a lot with that idea of putting an extra charge on it and then stun locking enemies into oblivion. Occasionally this will be helpful when dashing through enemies. Say you are standing right here fighting one enemy, there's a ton of enemies approaching you from over here, you can't walk around them, you want to walk through them, dash through them to buy yourself a bunch of space, a bunch of time, a bunch of room, and in the process a bunch of them will take a little bit of damage. Preferably, I definitely want to enhance this, or you definitely should enhance this in my opinion. The slow works out decently well, but more importantly, the width is great. More coverage with an ability that isn't super easy to hit, with an ability whose key point is width coverage in the first place, is great. So we just capitalize on that strength and try and make it go really, really wide. I do like that a lot as a crowd controlling ability, and since Severing Slash isn't a great ability by itself and doesn't have a great enhancement by any means, we're gonna have to focus on some sort of enhancement here, and Airburst is a decent place to start with, in my opinion. We're just gonna be using it occasionally as this extra sonic wave, as this, think of it as we are flying at very high speeds, like the enemy is in front of us, or the target, the prey is in front of us, flying away, fleeing from us, or maybe completely unaware of our presence. We keep screeching to locate them, to echo locate them, and then when we've located them and we have acquired it, essentially we have acquired a line of sight, we swoop in for the kill. From all the way up there, we take a nosedive, full speed, and pick them up. That's essentially what this ability does, right? Thematically speaking, you boom, right? You fucking... yeah, that's the nosedive. I know it's a little anticlimactic. It's quite short. It should be a little faster. Sound a little more viciously, but other than that, I think it thematically fits. Moving on to our stunner. This is our main screeching ability, though it won't be our main ability here for the build. Our main damage dealing ability. It's our standard Mach Stunner. Now, this is quite simple. You cast this sonic shockwave, I suppose, which doesn't count as neither ranged nor melee. Again, for whatever reason, it should be ranged, clearly, but it isn't anything. So this isn't gonna be super useful. It has very low base damage. But you cast this wave forth, and then it ricochets between you and your enemies, where you initially cast it a bunch of times, like so. It's not dynamic, it will remain in place, so it will bounce between where you casted it and where it would actually end, so to speak, and it will remain there for a short period of time, stunning enemies, as the name suggests, even though it doesn't do a very great job at it, as it doesn't hit frequently enough for late game enemies that are much faster and that have much faster reaction speeds to still remain stunned. Generally speaking, this has decent coverage and it's a decent utility tool, albeit not very useful damage-wise. When enhanced, it simply increases the distance traveled, which can be a negative sometimes because that means it travels longer, right? I don't know, though. I'm gonna have to be honest here. I'll have to confess, I haven't played with this ever before. I think this ability is absolute dog shit. So maybe the time that it needs to travel for the total of the distance remains the same, in which case it will travel faster. That would be quite useful. But I'm just assuming that when the range is enhanced, when the range is increased, it will travel more slowly at the same pace, roughly, probably, right? So yeah, that's not gonna be a very great enhancement by any means. It's just a decent crowd controlling ability, especially for those tight corridor-like rooms, like so. But you can already tell it doesn't do a great job at anything. It doesn't destroy projectiles well, since it doesn't count as a projectile. It can't innately destroy projectiles either, and you can slap gauntlets on this either way, or similar abilities that grant you a little bit of extra projectile destruction. Otherwise, this could potentially be quite useful, but as is, it's just not a good ability at all. However, thematically, absolutely on point. And then finally, for our most important ability, easily because this is the only halfway decent ability in this kit. Whoops, that's not it. It's gonna be Storm Draft, which is a projectile which can destroy projectiles. That's in fact its main purpose in a regular build, where you don't use this as a damaging ability. This is a full-blown utility spell, and it's super fun to use. Innately, it destroys projectiles already, due to itself being a projectile, but when enhanced, it destroys all enemy projectiles and pierces right through them, which is exactly what we want. That's gonna give us a lot of survivability and a lot of versatility for a lot of given situations, especially during boss fights. However, unlike the Mach Stunner, this doesn't have a great width, though it's still super hard to hit, and you can't just fire it off and hide behind it. Like with the Mach Stunner, I can literally stand right here, and if it were to destroy projectiles, I'd be untouchable by them and stun all melee enemies trying to get close to me, except those that jump, like Lancers, for example. But yeah, Storm Draft isn't very great at projectile destruction. It does destroy all projectiles, however, and that's quite important. So you can pair this very well with things like, what's it called? The item that grants you, it looks like a saw blade. The Bladed Buckler, right, Bladed Buckler. I always think it's a saw blade for whatever reason. It's apparently a buckler in the form of like a sun with a bunch of spikes on it, or thorns or whatever the hell. I don't know. It's just a buckler. So whenever you destroy projectiles, you gain a bunch of signature charge. This is your signature. Use it to destroy projectiles. You gain signature charge. You gain an immediate full signature charge bar. And boom, you can use your signature again in the form of your signature ability. That's awesome, right? So Storm Draft, beside that utility of destroying a great amount of projectiles, it has a decent range. It's a concentrated Screech, unlike the Mach Stunner. It's very targeted. Has 2 charges on it by default, so it can be enhanced further, which is very nice. We really want to do that, as this is our main damage source. We want to put like a Ring of Test Friendship on it, for example, to get an extra charges. That's absolutely amazing. We want extra cooldown reduction, like with our Temper Robe, which will make those charges tick down way faster. Anything that helps us deal more damage and cast us more often is gonna be super great. But now, let's actually move on to the cast. This is a long-range projectile piercing all enemies, dealing a hefty chunk of damage, and if it hits them into a wall, as it knocks them back quite a great distance, it essentially makes them travel along with this sonic shockwave. When it connects them into a wall, they will be stunned and take an extra amount of damage. Very similar to the Glacial Spear Arcana. Like so. And it's quite a hefty chunk of damage. Look at that signature charge generation as well. It's crazy good when hitting a large group of enemies, which unfortunately isn't super easy due to its very narrow width. That's the only downfall of this Arcana, really. And the signature version of it, because it's very much not powerful at all. This could have been one of the most viable wind abilities in the game. Instead, they ruined the signature, like so. You just cast them a bunch, right? So this is entirely useless into bosses, literally does nothing. And the base version isn't super useful into bosses either. You can't knock them back into wall, or, well, you can, but it won't make them take any additional damage. So you only deal half your damage effectively, or less than half. You can see I deal 20 on a regular hit and 30 on the collision with a wall. So boss damage is going to be very meager here early on, especially. But other than that, this ability is going to grant us a great amount of overall enemy clear, and it's going to feel like we are really forcing ourselves, like we are really trying to use our screeches, rather, our voice as a weapon against enemies, trying to deafen them, trying to stun them, or literally just kill them with it, like make their heads explode or their brains bleed or something like that. I don't know. There's probably a lot of references to that in series like Harry Potter or something, where you would use like a so high-pitched noise that it makes the ears of your enemies quite literally bleed and they die or something. I don't know if that's possible. I would assume so. I don't think it's very unlikely that frequencies can actually kill at least a human being, if not another fantasy, otherworldly creature. Right, all of that having been said, I'd say let's get into the build specifics. I can't wait to finally play this build. Let's start things off with the intended build playstyle, as per usual. I intend to play this build very loosely, very laid back. Definitely don't want to be too aggressive here. I do have a lot of cooldowns to manage after all. These abilities don't last for a very long period of time. They don't have the greatest coverage, generally speaking. Individually, right, together, we have a little bit of everything. We have a V-shaped basic Arcana, a Mach Stunner, which has a decent length, but not the greatest hit rate, a Stormdraft with a decent length, but a very poor width, and the Dash with a very great width, but a very poor length. We have a little bit of all kinds of range issues and coverage issues, so we simply have to be defensive. We have to stand in corners a lot, wait for enemies to approach us, group up naturally, because we can't really do that for them, and then follow that up with a Stormdraft, for example. A well-placed Stormdraft can easily clear a room. However, even in the early game, this thing doesn't kill right away, so you should always try to connect enemies to a wall to at least stun them, and then be able to finish them off manually afterwards, while they are still lingering around. Generally speaking, I don't think you can be aggressive with this build at all, especially into bosses. There's just no way you can make use of Mach Stunner, of Severing Slash, or Stormdraft there. You need a lot of tools, let me tell you, and a lot of patience, especially, to do bosses early on. And I probably would actually recommend starting out on Atlas early on, so you have a much easier time for the first dungeon, and you can try and acquire a bunch of items in the process, instead of starting out on something like a wind or a fire dungeon, just because you're very weak there, and they're easier to do earlier rather than later. I'm not opposed to the idea at all to make things early on myself. To make things easier on myself early on, as opposed to later during the game. I think this game really needs a bit of, this build really needs a bit of a head start, usually, generally speaking. Which brings us to the potential problem section. Your lack of damage, especially into bosses, is abhorrent. As with any wind build, you need a ton of extra base damage increases. We're talking base damage increases, alright? Not temporary base damage increases, not like conditional stuff. You really need base damage increases, not some shit like Heart Render's Amulet. You're low HP, you got damage now. Great. No, that's just way too risky to work with, generally speaking. You want a luxury hammer. You want a double trouble. You want the pinwheel, which increases all your wind damage dealt as you run full wind damage anyway. But more importantly, raw base damage, so your Brilliant Balloon gets affected by it too. Which, yeah, I know it isn't the greatest damage too, but it's gonna help you out a tiny bit here and there. Other than damage issues, you are a full wind build. That means your crowd control lacks naturally. Your crit chance lacks naturally. Your evasion would be great, but we are using a full damage build here with inbuilt utility, but the utility is rather mid. So you're kind of lacking and any kind of point that you can possibly make up here. Fire Dungeon is kind of hard, you don't deal a lot of damage there. Wind Dungeon is much harder though, not only because of Shu moving around a ton, being hard to hit, not exactly being able to be countered with a Stormdraft. He doesn't shoot a lot of projectiles, generally speaking, that can be destroyed. Most of his projectiles just pierce right through the whirlwinds, for example, or the gusts. The Wind Dungeon generally is very hard, so all the way up to Shu, evasion is very hard for you to deal with. You don't hit frequently at all. It's very hard for you to connect to enemies in the first place reasonably well, hitting a reasonable group of enemies. You never want to hit a single target with your abilities. That's just a massive waste of your cooldowns. So you definitely need to prepare for Wind Dungeon. If you're gonna face it, you definitely want an early on easy to play dungeon, just so you can acquire a bunch of gold, guaranteed, full clear all stages, and then move over to buy more items and stuff. I would either recommend that you absolutely 100% all the time, positively, start out with Atlas, or, because Atlas is actually a little bit too easy, right, just start out with either Freya, so Frost, Fire, so Zeal, or Lightning, so Thunder Twins, because you are going to be on neutral grounds there, so you're going to be dealing your base damage, not increased, not decreased, you still have a chance to find Atlas over the course of your run, which is just a free dungeon and a free boss. Technically speaking, right? Late game, anyway, not as your first dungeon, it's not free, you still have to work for it. But maybe later, once you've managed to find, anyway, a bunch of decent damage increases, I would probably recommend starting things off with the Frost dungeon, I'd say. Fire is also decent. I know you're gonna be weak there and all, but overall the enemies are quite melee focused, and since you're not exactly playing a melee build, you're gonna be having a decent time there as well. So I think I'll be starting things off either at Atlas or at any of the neutral dungeons, preferably Frost, as with Lightning attacks usually strike from above, so there's not a whole lot of projectiles that you can destroy. And what's the third option here? We had Fire, we had Wind, we had Frost, we had Earth, and we had Lightning. Right. So wait, no, let me go again. Fire, Fire, and Wind. You don't want to start out on. It's too hard. Earth, you could start out on, but it's gonna guarantee you a very, very easy late game dungeon potentially, right? You might end up finding that. And then you have Lightning and Frost. Right, Lightning you want to avoid because you can't destroy projectiles there for the most part. And Frost, you can still get frozen, but it's not as huge of a deal, generally speaking. And Freya is very projectile focused, so you might just be able to outplay her a lot. So we'll try and start either on Frost or in the Earth dungeon here. I think I personally would prefer the Frost dungeon. It's just a lot easier. There are no annoying shields that reflect your projectiles, for example. But Earth dungeon is quite fun, and I do like doing it a lot. So I'll probably start in the Earth dungeon here today. I don't know. We'll see. Right, I haven't decided yet. I'm indecisive. Moving on to my final section, recommended items and Arcana. There's a ton here. Anything that increases the cooldown reduction drastically. We're not talking Spice Rack. They ain't gonna work well here. We're talking on kill, gain cooldown reduction. We're talking use a wind ability, because you got all wind abilities, it lowers the cooldown of all wind abilities. That's cooldown reduction. We're talking chance-based cooldown reduction, 20% chance to instantly reset your cooldown. Absolutely. 20% chance to do anything regarding your cooldowns. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Reduce your movement ability-based cooldowns? Not so much, because they're not important, quite frankly. Signature charge gain is another form of cooldown reduction, as it literally allows you to immediately cast your signature the second your signature bar is full. Right? So that's 100% cooldown reduction in that moment, respectively with a much stronger ability, generally speaking. Other than those things, base damage increases are going to do very nice for this build. Crit chance, not so much at all, as your base damage is very lackluster. But base damage is incredibly important. You need it. You absolutely need it. If you absolutely cannot get it, if you can't find any of it, you have to take things like stones, you have to take things like sprites that at least deal a tiny bit of extra damage for you, or items that work in a similar fashion to your Brilliant Balloon, so at least you're gonna not be left completely without any form of damage, as boss fights take forever without extra base damage increase, especially Sura. If I were to throw you right now with this build into the Sura fight, you'd be stuck for a good 5 minutes or more. It's ridiculous how low damage this build actually is, and you really need base damage. You can't just stack armor. Unlike other builds that already have decent base damage abilities, you can't just stack defensive items here and expect your boss fight to go well, because it's still gonna take forever. It's gonna take absolute decades to finish, and that's not fun for anyone, really. At least to me, it's absolutely not. So you're gonna want to find a ton of base damage and signature charge gen, preferably, but raw cooldown reduction is also very much appreciated. For example, the Elemental Pointe, it's easily one of the best items here. The Pinwheel, as I mentioned, any of the painting related items are very good for you, except the one that blocks, I'd say. That's not super useful, but like even the Fiery Paintbrush is gonna do decently well. It's gonna put in a bunch of work. And then for defensive items, you really only need 2 very good ones, probably 1 or 2, like a limited edition robe is already enough to settle you for the rest of the match, the game, sorry. Or alternatively, a Kasim's Area Cloak, that can also be very nice. Can also be paired later on with a Covert Ops Mask, for example. So just try and look for devastating combos. Try to invest your gold well. You're going to be having a surplus of gold here as your abilities suck absolute donkey dark water. You definitely do not want to enhance your abilities. Your Robe does have a decent enhancement. You definitely want to get that as early on as possible. But that's really the only thing that you can enhance here right out of the gates without really... having to bargain with yourself. Was all that gold that I spent on my Airburst Dash upgrade really worth it? So, all of that having been said, I probably should mention that you should run a bunch of Arcana too, before forgetting about that. Here, I tend to forget a lot of things in these explanation parts. Abilities, of course, you want to run anything that's wind related, so you can increase your wind cooldown reduction, your wind damage, and things specific to your most dominant element. But more so than that, you actually want reliable, very strong, high base damage abilities. All of the ones that I usually name are appropriate here, especially Airborne Slam, because it's a jump, but it's also wind related, so super great. You really want to get your hands on one. Scales of Babylon is amazing, great cooldown reduction, wind element, great damage, great coverage, great everything. Really, the utility on this and the damage of this, the versatility of this is insane, goes through the roof. Permafrost Bulwark is insane, I still love it, to the death. I think this thing is amazing. And then your usual Exploding Fireball, Bolt Claymore. There's not really a wind equivalent to these very high base damage, long-range abilities. Stormdraft would probably be that wind equivalent, to be totally frank with you, and it's conditional, right? You want something that is non-conditional, applicable to bosses, specifically if you were to have to fight, say, Shu as your final dungeon, your final boss, go for fire abilities. Any of them, a Blazing Lariat, for example, will do very well too, as long as you deal a decent amount of damage and it makes the fight not last forever. The ability that you choose is going to be worth it. Even a cardist trade here might come in handy. I would not recommend trading away any of your abilities, as that would kind of ruin the illusion that we are sticking with a theme here. But generally speaking, if you have the chance to trade away Mach Stunner, get the enhanced Mach Stunner, and then get yourself a neat pool of abilities. Hopefully so. I'm hoping for you that you will actually end up finding decent abilities. And so, likewise, I would hope for you to pray for me, pray for us to find decent abilities here, as we will definitely need a lot to close off this run. Let's get into it, though. So, I still haven't decided, personally. Let's see what comes up first. If it's Earth, we'll pick Earth. If it's Water, we'll pick Water. Just let fate decide. Thundering Keep. That's not what I'd like. Chilling Dungeons. Alright. Let's get into it. Oh my. That is very bad. Water, wind, and fire. Woo, mama. At least fire is the final dungeon here, not wind, because wind would have been absolutely devastating. Okay, keep interrupting them, keep dancing around them. There's not really a reason to take a lot of damage early on, besides you being overtly aggressive. You don't want to cast Mach Stunner when you're too far away. It's very easy to miss that ability. I push him into the walls there. I do want to loot absolutely everything that I come across. I'm gonna be needing a ton of money here. I want to upgrade my gear early on afterwards. After all, sorry, not afterwards. Boots of Frenzy. Vicious Bunny is I don't have a jump. Spice Rack. I can use, as I mentioned in the beginning, as much as I would love to. It's just not useful. Boots of Frenzy is decent, but a little rough to use. Like, it forces you to be overtly aggressive with your dash uses. I don't really like that. It might seem flexible at first. Now I want to group up all enemies on one side, and I want to stand on the other side, just so I will have a much easier time to finish them off, without actually having to defend two sides all at once. Always want to keep track of the Lancers. Stun them into a wall. Amazing. Because Lancers can just jump across your attacks, similarly to you being able to jump through entire barrages worth of attacks. Damn, he actually hit me there. That was very fast and unexpected. Push them back towards the wall. Alright, take care of the Lancers. Want to group them back up. Kind of split them up on the edge here. Right. We are going to be running the Jazz soundtrack today. I'm just feeling it. It's great. It's chill. I believe like this is going to be a bit of a longer run. So yeah, Jazz is a great choice, generally speaking. 25 for Bolt Rail. That is crazy. I would love to, but I can't. Explosive Charge isn't super great, so I don't think I'm going to be picking that. And it's a melee ability, so it would heavily relate to our basic and our dash, which I really don't want to do. Alright. Cast it early so I have enough freedom to dodge the big boy. Just spam my abilities against him. As it will either way take forever to kill him. He's knockback resistant, so he can't be knocked into a wall, therefore I can only deal half damage to him. Yada yada yada. You get it at this point, right? It's a bit of a struggle. Let's grab this health orb and move on. Alright, just keep him stunned. Keep alternating between your stuns, but don't use them non-stop. Don't spam them, because then you're not gonna get the maximum out of your individual stuns. You want to use all of them for the maximum duration achievable. So wait out until enemies begin to not be stunned any longer, and then strike. So all the way up there, my pink. So let's go take a look. It's kind of an unfortunate first green stop. There's really nothing that I can pick from it. I would love to. Oh no, I hit the wall accidentally. Mach Stunner is just too wide. I'll take my time at this trip. I don't want to rush things and take damage. Ooh, Taffy's very bad early on. That's definitely not gonna cut it. I want him to walk towards a wall. Can I even stun him? I'm not sure. But Taffy is so bad early on. Come on, against the wall with you. Come on, you bastard! Yeah, it's not happening. Not now and not ever. Not even with any of these. These deal rather low damage as well. Explosive Charge would still be the greatest option here. I'm just not sure I want it, as I will be farming 2 dungeons where it's gonna be very weak. Both the water and the fire dungeon are not very supportive of fire abilities. So it's not gonna be very useful. It's not a very long-term purchase by any means. Viking helmet. Maybe I will grab explosive charge just for a little bit of extra damage this early on. I think I can do another floor with these abilities, but I definitely gotta pick up something on the next stage. I would much prefer not picking up explosive charge here. As I mentioned, it's not gonna be very good. It's very high risk, low reward. It doesn't get a great amount of damage. That means while being rather hard to use, you have to get very close to your enemies. You have to dash around a bunch. It forces you to move therefore, which can completely screw up your positioning. Let's pop everything. We already have so much money. We can pick up a minus item and probably be fully stacked at this point. At least in a second. Yes, they max out at 500G. Works for me. Thanks, Brilliant Balloon. That's not exactly what I wanted to do, but it definitely helps out a lot. I was gonna walk past the summon and then stone against the wall so you wouldn't summon anything. The wallet is a decent purchase. Surefire would have an immediate effect on my gameplay, so I'll pick it up. Kremire token, not so sure about that one, honestly. I don't have anything to sell beside the token. And is it worth forcing a Kremire early on? I don't think so. Berserker is not gonna be useful at all. It's very conditional. So I could sell it easily. It does look very nice on my hand though. Which is a great reason to keep it. Oh, I would love the slow in my dash. It would really tie my combos together. Just kill them one by one while using cover. No projectiles in here, boy. Alright. Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Now, if I had Tears of Miners, I would let him deliberately smash me to pieces, just so I would deal decent damage. It's kind of the emo, selfish, narcissistic trope of hurting yourself just so others will acknowledge your existence. What? Ooh, gyroscopic ink. Well, that's gonna not be useful at all because we already got a surefire rocket that does this for us. Except gyroscopic also works when our signature is already here, which can be decent just to hold your signature all the much longer. But generally speaking, this is not very useful. So I think I might actually commit to buying the Kremire token just to gain back a little bit of money from all these rather conditional or useless items. They're not useless, okay? They're just not good enough. Oh, come on, you. Lances are the bane of my existence. Always focus on the Lancer. I did miss him like twice with the Mach Stunner, which is embarrassing, but oh well. Oh no. Just push him into the pit. Oh my god, I missed it again! Alright, pull him. I'll push him, that works too. No mimic, great. No healing either. Not a whole lot anyway. Man! That was a lot of stupid mistakes, but I'm still at 400 HP. 300 probably without all chests. Very comfortable. Not worried whatsoever. I will, after all, only be encountering Freya afterwards, so... I should be fine. Alright, that's not a great spell. I'll pick this up. I could go for Viking Milt here. I don't know. I'll do it. I kind of have to, right? I'm kind of forced to right now. I don't want to gamble with my abilities, so I kind of gotta get the Fractal Flare. Whether I want to or not, I'll have to pick it up. Oh no, it crossed me. Keep Storm Draft just to counter the projectiles. And he will never go anywhere. Alright. I wish I had Tears of Midas right now, just so I could make use of all this low HP related stuff. I really want to be low HP for that armor and the damage boost. It's not going to be a ton of damage. 15% is not the world when your base damage is horrid. But it's still gonna be more than nothing. Horrid base damage. Oh man. Just how can you play Wind? How can you honestly, proudly say that you like playing Wind? I don't get it. How can people do this? You absolute creature of the deep. You monster. Just toss the Fire Spam there for a little bit of extra damage. Whoops. Vacuum Seekers. Alright, that's kind of fun for room clear. Not very useful here, but it might come in handy a little bit into I was gonna say enhanced enemies. What are they called again? Evasive enemies, right? Because they do pursue my enemies. Ignore the slimes for now. My targets are much more important. Gyroscopic Inkwell value? Oh, never mind. No thank you. I do not exactly feel like getting the shit beaten out of right now. Maybe later, we'll see. That's not a very good item. Always remember that there's a Lancer in this room. Fuck that guy, by the way. Alright, decent amount of damage there. I was gonna say chunk, I was tempted, but 40 damage is not a chunk, my friend. That's just less than a regular fireball. Use the Seekers for a bit of AoE. Keep him suspending it. I missed it. You absolute cunts! Evasion, man. How dare you? How dare you defend yourself against me? Oh, well, now with these items I kind of regret not having picked up these Sandy's shoes earlier, and then I could have gone for a full low HP type of build. Didn't really have a whole lot of stuff. And here I do have Covered Ops Mask, which would have been amazing for that scenario, but it won't do anything guaranteed right now, so I shouldn't pick it up. The Bubblegum is decent, but not decent enough to warrant picking it up right now. Freezing Sprite, on the other hand, is definitely decent enough. Monster Tooth is not decent enough to spend 150 gold on it. Even though I already got Surefire Rocket, my signature simply isn't very powerful. And it hinders me from using my 2 charges, so sometimes it's arguably even worse. How did you hit me? A-hole. Come on, hey Grandma. We'll do this after having finished the boss. There's no point doing it before. You're just leaving yourself at a disadvantage. Thanks for that tiny bit of healing, at least. At least I got some. Bolt Claymore unenhanced? Yes. I think so, yes. Maybe not. I got okay damage here. For floor clearing, anyway. Right, let's sell all of our stuff. First is the token. Alright, I gotta drop it up, forget. Then gyroscopic inkwell. Dated sunglasses is... Well, it's defense, and it could come in handy with the storm draft. So I have a little bit of extra time for enemies. Say, like, this is very specific, but say there's a mage. They're usually in the back line, right? And a bunch of frontline enemies like a knight or lancer. The enemies in the front line will start grouping up to approach me. Right, to always go the shortest route towards me. While the mage is shooting projectiles on the back. Then I still have a decent amount of time to wait for the enemies to fully group up before I will have to purge both the enemies and the projectile with a storm draft. But that's so specific that I don't consider that worth it at all. In other builds, yeah. In this one, I definitely do not need it. Bolt Claymore, absolutely, 100% positively Super useful, much more useful probably than Fractal Flare, at least for the boss, so I'm grabbing that right now. I want to get that enhanced immediately for extra damage in area of effect. It's very, very good. Other than that, I don't want the banker. I don't want any of this crap, really. I don't want Monster Tooth, it's just too unreliable. And it's not very good in the first place with this signature. I have much better abilities. For example, my my 3 helpers over here. The Fractal Flare, Bolt Clamor, and the Seekers. Which all deal more damage, I'm pretty sure. Okay, I got hit again. Because I'm a little dumb. And I let Lances fuck me up frequently. Well, you can't find Neve's items inside of a run for whatever ungodly reason, so even if I were to run all in, it wouldn't really help me out. Oh, right through the middle, huh? No. Fuck you. Very hard hitting the Fractal Flare perfectly inside of the middle of a bunch of enemies. Like, man, it's really hard to sink it in there. I usually miss, it's just not thick enough. Controller aim, man. I'll just blame it on that. Okay. Glass Cannon is decent because it means I'll be at low health a lot more. Yeah. Sure. Oh wow. Thank you, Glass Cannon. Amulet of Sundering is a lot of extra damage. Friendship is a tiny bit of extra damage. I'll take both. Grease Boots for a free upgrade on the dash and cooldown reduction. Yes, Nocturnal Sundial is a lot of cooldown reduction. I'm not sure I need it at this point since I got the Glass Cannon. If I wind up having enough damage, sorry, enough money at the end of this stage, I will return and grab it. But for now, I'll leave it there. So yeah, I definitely won't need it at this point. I got a lot of dash crowd control through the Grease Boots. Thank you, Brilliant Balloon. Thank you for your service. Alright, still alive, huh? Oh my god, I keep missing that. Freezing Sprite. Always gotta pay attention to what you get, because when you freeze those guys and you hit them once, they immediately unfreeze, literally giving you absolutely no time to react to their attack. Freezing Sprite is very risky to use, for sure. But I do like it. Still, it's my favorite status effect after all. My favorite element overall? I love freezing people. Including myself, it's great. Nocturnal Sundial? Yeah, it's a lot of damage, I'll pick it. Alright. Fire. But it does make me pay a lot of attention to the UI here, to see whether or not I got an instant reset. What do we do next? I don't really need that, even though it would actually be helpful here because the final dungeon is burnt, so I'll get it. Man, what a wonky build. But it's definitely gonna put in some heavy lifting here. Plenty of work, hopefully. Right. Yeah, let's go. Shoot! I definitely want to get rid of those, though. Get the Claymon stat for a lot more consistent damage. Non-reduced damage. Neutral damage. Now, an absolute professional would have swapped out the Mach Stunner as well. But it's an integral part of my build, yada yada yada, and I just don't like swapping a lot. Oh, Claymore, my man. You're so helpful! And so is the Fractal. Let's do this. Water Prison. Yeah. Sure. I much prefer Fractal Flare against Sora, but Water Prison is pretty damn strong. I want to keep the Wind Arcana just in case I find anything that buffs my damage regarding on. Well, we're talking about one item here. Might as well name it Royal Flush. I'm talking Royal Flush. The more wind abilities I got, the more damage I will be dealing overall. Always gotta speculate for either Captain's Ring and or Royal Flush in any given run, right? This run, I'm gonna be honest, it feels like I'm an actual wizard, like I'm an actual magician. Oh, hey, that's a mimic. I don't want to hit that accidentally. Oh, it gets done like my friend. Tattered Scroll. No. No, thank you. I don't want more signature charge gain. I don't want to ruin it either. I don't think Tattered really does anything for me. Oh, hello. Hello, my barrely friend. Nothing super interesting in here. So I think I'm just gonna move on. I'll still keep collecting all the gold. Oh. There always comes a point where you find a super precious item. And you don't have enough gold for it. You really want to be that guy? Just throw a bunch of Whoa, shit, dude, you were crazy fast. Severing slash. I could grab that. I don't really need to. There's no incentive. No incentive provided here, so maybe I won't. Armor upgrade is very, very good. But I'm only on 3-1, so maybe it's a little early to pick that up. Provided I, I don't know. Do I want to have that? Like, I do take damage occasionally. I don't really feel like losing gold, but on the other hand, I have a pretty solid build, so the armor would be quite helpful. And it would keep me alive a lot longer, so I can remain alive on low HP count a lot longer, so I can deal a lot more damage. Just walk away. No. Come on, Rocket. Wrong direction, my friend. Okay. There's that room left. No. Stop it. What do we do? Whatever will we do? Nobody knows. I kind of want the armor. I think it's gonna come in very handy, and it's just a matter of what the hell do I get rid of? Probably not the freezing spot, as it is quite effective here. It's still quite a bummer of an ability. I do also... I really want to keep my stuff. But armor is just infinitely more powerful than anything I have, really. I want to keep the sunscreen. It's just... I don't know, because it's kind of funny. So I guess I'll get rid of the Sprite. Gotta keep the wallet until the very end. It also allows me to purposely purchase myself to low HP. I don't really feel like getting rid of it. I'll just toss easily the worst item in my kit. Go for the armor of greed before the boss fight. Not the greatest decision, but still a decision. And it's my decision. Can't do anything about it. Punk ass. Oh. Didn't realize he was still alive. Dude, I'm just not watching myself right now. I am just not watching at all right now. Alright. How much gold did I just lose? I don't want to know, is the answer. I better invest it quickly. Now that's a stackable, and it's slightly better than this, so I'll stack it with the bubbles. Not technically better because I have to actively use my basic Arcana for this to even proc, which I don't do a whole lot. I basically don't do at all at this point. But regardless, 2 effects are better than 1 that can screw me up. This one at least can't screw me over. The bubbles, the candies generally are not gonna be destructive to my overall game plan. Ooh, almost dashed into those projectiles there. Just far a bunch of prisons in there. I see. I might be better off using these Seekers over the prison here. They just grant me a lot more AoE. That's what I'm talking about. At least into neutral enemies. Yeah, I'm gonna be using them here. Okay, so they require 360-degree coverage, which I value definitely more so than just having single target damage. I know that's a room with waves. I don't know what's gonna be spawning here. I can predict, but for the most part, it doesn't really matter. As long as there are waves, 360-degree coverage is obviously going to be a lot more impactful than single target damage. Even though you get multiple charges off the water prison, it's just not super powerful unless you pair it with great control, which I am lacking. So, I'd much rather run these right now. For the time being, anyway. Group them all up to destroy projectiles. I don't want to risk being hit here. And cast my massive overpowered claymore. Right. Oh. Oh! Didn't mean to walk that much. Definitely didn't want to walk that far, but well, I did. I've made a lot of stupid mistakes here, just by literally walking into enemies or standing still, not avoiding attacks. That thief fight was especially pathetic, I gotta say. But what can I say? I'm kind of out of practice. I'm kind of washed up at this point. I don't really play the game much, so I think all this innate noobiness is warranted. After all, I'm still not struggling, so there are not really any consequences. Abacus would have been amazing early on into the run, same for Roxels, but at this point I don't really need them. Braces I can't really use decently well. Robe upgrade isn't super useful. I got a ton of color reduction already. I'd just be working with a lot less health. I might actually get it though. Just for a tiny bit of extra DPS, so I can use my claymore more frequently. Fancy glaze? Really? Now, in case you're wondering, I'm not that daft. I just walked into that because I thought I had a freaking Stormbreath charge, but nope. Alright. Now, while I am taking a lot of damage instances here, I have been taking a lot of smaller hits. I'm not really threatened here by any means. My HP is just fine. You can say coping, haha, all you want, but I'm fine. I'm clearly fine. I do want to use my basic a lot more frequently for the candy procs. They're gonna help me deal a lot of extra damage into bosses and mini-bosses. Just like my dash with the grease boots. Zonya's Hourglass is a little... Oh, okay, dude. Like, what do we do at this point? Like, the Hourglass is kind of insane, if you think about it. Sorry, not Zonia's. I've played too much League of Legends. Phoenixes, how the fuck you pronounce that? Just call it Zonia's instead, honestly. It's a League of Legends term anyway. This right activates when taking damage at low health and briefly removes the cooldown on all Arcana. So I get to low health, I take damage with items like Armor of Resolve and Armor of Greed. That shouldn't be a big deal. I gain extra damage from Berserkers and no cooldowns for a short period of time with the Phoenixes. That's crazy. With a Claymore, I just Claymore. Just literally stand inside of Syrah and spam the Claymore, which is a ton of damage. I don't think it's enough to warrant actually keeping it, but it's still a lot. It's still a lot of damage. Anything else that I can get rid of beside the Nocturnal Sundial here? I kind of want to keep the Friendly Bracelet. It's 5% extra damage dealt. Not really. I can't really get rid of anything except this. 5% damage, is that gonna be worth? I don't think so. As much as I would love to believe that the bracelet actually does anything for us, I don't think that's the case. Alright, let's move on. Hello, Zeal. How is it going, my friend? Yeah. I want to use Claymore melee range, so it detonates immediately. I won't have to detonate it manually, so I can spam it as much as possible. Also spam my Water Prison, because it stacks. Okay, I was way too slow on that. Cancel it, just shoot once. Again, I'm so slow on the storm drafts here. Well, I'm pretty sure I also didn't have one there to begin with, but I keep missing them. Oh man. Just keep in mind to not get nervous at low HP. She can really kill me. Chakrams. No, I don't think so. It's quite spam heavy. No, I don't think I want that. She can't really kill me. She could, but a lot would have to go wrong for that to happen. Yay. I'm an idiot. I'm really not good at this. Really not doing well today. Just keep standing around and observing way too much instead of acting. I gotta act fast, and I end up standing around a ton for some reason. Believing that... It's literally just a lack of practice here that I believe... that I keep believing that certain plays are more efficient than others. But I evaluate completely wrong. Ooh, this would have come in handy early on. I think we honestly just move on here. Like, I could have made some World of Vigor plays, but I don't think that's happening today. It's just way too risky. Of course, I could have probably purchased a heavy travel jacket and then broken this apart. But then I wouldn't be full HP. I don't think I have great damage here. I kind of rely on having at least a little bit of HP. So, yeah, let's go. My heart is broken that we haven't found a pinwheel or any similar items that are single element build related. But at least we found a glass cannon. I hate that attack. The fact that it goes off in an undodgeable manner when you actually stun him during it, when you break his shield, in other words, just doesn't add up. God, I hate long zero fights. Please make it quick, boy. Kill me, but kill me fast. Just popping the signature there in case you were to cast the freeze. Okay, GG. As I said in the very beginning of this video, precisely in the build specifics part, this specific build, low HP related, is absolute ass for our Sweet Sweet Bat Screech theme, because you're simply never gonna be on low HP for a long period of time, because you can't let that happen. If you let it happen, you're gonna die. You can't sustain, you can't survive long enough. You don't have evasion, you don't have a lot of movement speed, or jumps with iframes and similar abilities or tools to your at your disposal, rather, to your availability. So of course, this build was complete ass. I'm still glad that I made it somehow. It did take forever, but thanks to the glass cannon plus armor of Greek combo, I was actually able to ramp up decent damage numbers. Then with the amulet of sundering and the friendly bracelet, we could at least round our build well off a little bit, just enough so that we would deal decent damage numbers. Grease boots were definitely one of the MVPs of this run, I'd say. Super, super fun to use, along with the glass cannon, obviously super useful. Love the slow on the airburst for this particular build. Allows us to just stand around, wait for our cooldowns a lot more by slowing enemies drastically. The water prison definitely helped a ton with that too, granting a ton of extra slows, because the more of these you stack on an enemy, the slower they will move, which is crazy. You could see that in full effect a couple of times here at the very end of the run. Very useful, very good damage overall. Probably the only decent damage dealing Arcana that I found beside the Claymore, which, let's be honest, hands on the table as we say, isn't exactly a very good damage dealing ability. You have to fire it off, then you have to let it linger for a while so it can expand to its full AoE, then you have to manually detonate it again, which is just, you know, the ease of use is kind of lost on it. You have to either fire it off and detonate it very quickly and in a controlled environment, or you have to stand in front of your single target that you intend to hit, literally inside of their face, basically, right? And you have to cast this so it immediately detonates inside of them. I'm not sure whether or not it would deal the same damage at that point, but generally speaking, this is not a great ability into bosses. It moves rather slowly. It does have a huge coverage, but it doesn't deal the greatest amount of damage unless you have like an absolute crap ton of base damage plus crit chance with a singing ball, for example. Then this ability becomes all of a sudden an absolute menace to reckon with. But in this particular build, with these items, these very mid, partially very underwhelming items, look at Berserkers, look at Armor, and look at the Hourglass. These items were essentially entirely worthless. The Box of Sweets were decently useful, but again, they don't deal a lot of damage when you don't have a lot of base damage. So most of these items were not impactful at all towards our overall damage contribution. And so the Claymore, naturally, isn't gonna do super well either. Base level, it's just a good ability. And that's it. The Water Prison, on the other hand, since it can be stacked, since it was enhanced for extra movement speed and an extra charge, we could deal a decent amount of damage with this. Unlike with our Stormdraft, for example, which is entirely useless. Same for the Mach Stunner, entirely useless into late game bosses. Doesn't do anything at all, barely even tickles the enemy, so might as well not cast it at all. You're literally better off not using either of these over wasting the little bit of time that you have to damage the boss casting 2 charges of Stormdraft, which lock you in place for a short period of time. I know it's a very short period of time, but during that period of time you could have also cast 3 Water Prisons to follow that up with a Claymore, and then Stormdraft in between the boss attacks, for example, right? So, I'm very surprised that we actually made it here. This was very underwhelming, I gotta admit. Very, very underwhelming build. It's not the fault of the theme here overall, even though we are running Wind, so this does happen a lot. But that's just me personally hating on Wind a lot. I still had a decent time here. Sure, I might have not been overpowered or even decently powerful over the course of this run. I might have reached maybe 1 or 2 power spikes, especially I fondly remember the moment where I picked up Grease Boots along with a bunch of other crap like the Surefire Rocket, and all of a sudden I could actually dish out decent damage numbers due to my dash having such a large coverage and then slowing enemies and such an incredibly short cooldown. I can just spam it non-stop pretty much. Look at that. What's that, like 2-second cooldown? That is crazy. That is really, really nice. I remember a handful of power spikes, a handful of decent moments, but for the most part, here, I'd say this run was a bit of a bell curve, a very flattened bell curve. So you had 1, maybe 2 power spikes, and then for the most part, we kept it very consistently, with consistently low expectations. I did, however, have a decent time, considering that this is a full Wind build. Usually, this means inherent suffering. I did suffer a little bit, but only from my own stupidity for the most part here, from standing still and falsely evaluating given situations, then obviously following that up with very false and questionable actions, like literally standing still in the thief fight. Man, that one was so horrible. I did so terrible in that one. Anyway, hope you had a good time too. Hope I could show you off a albeit rather simple but fun and interesting thematically build here today. And until next time, you know how it is, you know how it goes. Let me drop the Viking helmet here for a second. I wish you all a good morning, a good day, or a good night. And until next time, bye-bye.